a coming-of-age story following Selena as she chases her dreams and heart-wrenching and life-changing sacrifices she and her family make as they navigate the highs and lows of success, loss, love, and music. Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. I am here today to give you all my early review for the highly anticipated series Selena, which will be premiering on Netflix December 4th. So this will be a spoiler-free review. Before we dive into the details, as you can see on the screen now, make sure you're following me on all my other social media accounts. That way you all can stay up to date on what's going on over here at Movie Files. If you are new to the channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing, and while you're at it, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my other early Netflix reviews, TV coverage, movie reviews, live streams, all the fun things we do on this very channel. And it would mean a lot to me if you all can share this video and give it a thumbs up. It helps out the channel, but I also really appreciate it. And in the comments below, again, I know this is an early review, but let me know in the comments, number one, once you saw the trailer, once you heard it was going to be a series on Netflix, were you excited for it? And also, let's talk about Selena. Were you a fan of the film? Did you like her music? Let's just talk about the wonderful person that she was in the comments below. And then once it does come on Netflix December 4th, let's discuss everything. Your pros, your cons. What'd you think about the characters? What do you think about the story? And this is a part one of a part two. So after you've seen part one, are you excited for part two? So let's discuss everything in the comments below. So before I get into my positives, my negatives, my overall thoughts, let you know if it's worth checking out, let me just share my personal story with Selena. So I am a product of the 90s. So yes, I've seen the 97 film a million times with J-Lo. My mom was a big fan of J-Lo as well as Selena, and I became a fan of her, loved her music, loved what she stood for. I mean, when you look at Selena's career, she was a singer, a songwriter, a model, an actress, a fashion designer. She is referred to as the Queen of Tejano music, and her contributions to music and fashion made her one of the most celebrated Mexican-American entertainers of all time. So again, this is a highly anticipated series. I was very excited for it, and I am so excited to talk about it in this review. So let's kick this thing off, starting off with the positives. First and foremost, again, not really comparing this show to the film, because again, you have a 2-hour film versus a 9-episode, 40-minute per episode show, so it's kind of hard to compare the two. But just highlighting what the film gave us versus what the show gave us pertaining to the family dynamic on the road. It's a portion of the film, and the film has different portions of Selena's life. But in this show, I really enjoyed how they really showed the sacrifice, the hustle, the dedication made from the family. I'm talking AB, Abraham, Suzette, obviously Selena, her mother, Marcella. The amount of time that they spent on the road together and what they had to do to become what we know them as in real life, but also in pertaining to the show. When you first meet this family, when they first get together as a band, seeing them making their own equipment, only getting gigs at restaurants, weddings, seeing them just busting their ass to become what they become in the series, it was a really good journey to kind of see throughout this series, which I really enjoyed. And again, you get that in the movie, but it really isn't expanded upon as it is in this series. So I really enjoyed that aspect, which, speaking of, the family's dedication and hustle, I love the family dynamic in this show, right? Whether that be seeing Selena and her big sister Suzette, seeing their relationship, whether that be AB and Abraham kind of butting heads at times, but seeing that kind of relationship that they had, and how AB was such a vocal point in this kind of creating this band, whether he's the producer, getting guitarists, and then again, seeing Abraham and their relationship coming together, and also just their family dynamic as a whole. It was really kind of great to see them kind of come together, having their ups, having their downs, but I really enjoyed the family dynamic that we get within this series. Which brings me to another element that I really enjoy, which is the idea of doing whatever it takes to make your dreams come true. And seeing how the family backing Selena and them being part of her dreams made it a little bit more easier for them to all come together and make their dreams come true. So I kind of love that aspect of the show as well. I also like how the series kind of tackles the idea of how once we get to a certain portion in the series, Selena gets a record label, and the record label wants her to kind of stay within her lane, the Tejano music, right? She's a Mexican American, and she really wanted to kind of stick to the American side because she loves Whitney Houston. She loves the music of the 80s and the 90s, and we'll touch on that a little bit here. But I love how the show kind of talks about breaking out of your box and sometimes being risky, taking risks, believing in yourself, having your family behind you. And I kind of like how the show kind of tackles that idea of, again, she wanted to be more than just known for Tejano music, which she's phenomenal as, and the Queen of Tejano music, but she also wanted to have a global audience as well. So I like how the show handled that. I touched on it just briefly there a little bit, the idea of her being a Mexican American and her really kind of being pushed to just do Mexican music, which she was phenomenal at, but she also, again, she wanted the global audience. So it really kind of also highlights the idea of what it's like to be a Mexican American, how certain things are perceived and how you're looked at, and are you Mexican enough? Are you American enough? Can you reach a global audience? So I like the way the show kind of handles that as well. And also, I'm just a fan of like remember VH1 Behind the Music? I love kind of those behind the scenes of how people become who they are, how they come up with songs, how they come up with certain beats, how they come up with the band ideas and different branding and album covers. This show kind of dives into that as well, and I kind of like seeing all that behind the scenes of the show that they had to offer, whether it be how they recorded certain music, how they came up with certain moves, how they came up with costuming, designs. All that stuff was really kind of fascinating, really kind of made it really enjoyable to kind of get that behind the scene aspect of this series and how Selena became who she became to be. So transitioning into the performances, starting off with the head of the family, and that is Abraham, played by Ricardo Chavarria. Now, you see Abraham in the movie, and you mainly see his evil side, or I should say not evil, but his mean side, right? He's always pushing his family to be great, which you get that in this series. You see his ego. You see him being mean. You see him just kind of being no one you want to mess with, right? You don't want to be on his bad side, and you better play by his rules, or you're going to be out of this band. So you see all that in the series, but then you also get to meet Abraham more. You get to see his softer side. You get to see him as more of a loving father, more in this series than you kind of do within the movie. But also, you kind of understand where Abraham's coming from. You know why he's pushing his family so hard to become great. You know, he also kind of, in a way, the show also kind of gives you a little bit of insight on him living his dreams through his kids and what that means to the family dynamic. So I really thought the performance that we got from Ricardo was really great. And Abraham, like I said, you get a lot of layers and you get a lot of complexity from that character, which also brings me to the mother of the family, played by Sadie Lopez, who plays Marcela. Now, I'll be honest, she doesn't get a lot to do in this series. She's kind of really one note for me personally, and we'll talk about her a little bit later. But in regards to the positives from this performance, I think that you really got the idea that she was a loving mom. Now, I wish she would have spoke up more from herself, because Abraham was making all the decisions, and every now and then, to be fair to the performance and also the character, she stepped in when Abraham was really pushing the kids too much. But in regards to the positives, again, you really got the sense that she was a loving mother, and she really wanted to make sure that her kids were successful, as well as her family. So I like the performance there. Got to get into the kids of the family, starting off with Suzette, played by Naomi Gonzalez, who I really liked in her role. You know, when you meet her at a very young age, when they're starting this band, she doesn't want to play the drums. Girls don't play drums, as she says, but as you kind of meet the character, as things move forward, she really embraces being a part of the band, being a drummer, seeing people inspired by her. So I really like that performance and seeing her kind of love interest that you get in the season. So I like Suzette's story. And again, I love the chemistry that she had with her sister, Selena, and really kind of being that big sister and helping her out when she was kind of down and out. So I really like the performance that we get, played by Naomi Gonzalez as Suzette. Now getting to Gabriel Chavarria, who plays AB, who honestly, you get a lot from AB. Again, I talked about it up top, but you see how Abraham pressed him to be the producer, come up with the songs, come up with the band members, and he really had a lot on his plate. And you really kind of see within that character the struggle, the stress that he had on his back. Also, him falling in love, him being there for his family, him really wanting this band to succeed. So really, AB, I did not expect to get that much from AB, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. It almost feels like it's the AB show, the Abraham and AB show, more than Selena, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later in this review. But I really enjoyed the performance. I really enjoyed that character, and again, you really see all the sacrifices he made to make sure that this band was the #1 band. So last but not least, we got to talk about the star of this show, which is Selena. So Christian Sarajos plays Selena, and what I liked about Christian's performance is you really got the idea and really got the sense of how loving Selena was, how caring she was, how appreciative she was of the position that she was in, knowing that she had her family to be there with her every single night, knowing that she knew she made sacrifices, but she was okay with those sacrifices because she knew what it would lead to. So I thought that she really embraced the loving side of Selena, the powerful side of Selena, how important she was to the culture, how, again, loving she was, how understanding she was. So I really enjoyed that performance of Selena, and we'll get into a little bit more of Christian's performance a little bit later. But as a whole, again, from when I grew up listening to Selena's music, the little clips you see from interviews from back in the day, of course the movie, and how J-Lo gave the performance, again, I really think that Christian really showed us how loving of a person she was and how beautiful of a person she was and just how much heart she had. So I thought that Christian really gave us that aspect of this incredible person that we get and this incredible singer that we have with Selena. So wrapping up some of my other positives, I do want to highlight, I really appreciate how the show embraced the times that they were in, whether it be the late 70s, the early 80s, and into the 90s. It really kind of shows you the fashions that was out during that time, the wigs, the music that was really influential to Selena's career. I really kind of like how they embraced the time period, and also being a product of the 90s, there were a lot of 90 references that I had a good time with, as well as seeing some things from the 80s, so I really enjoyed that. And then also, lastly, when it comes to some positives, to me, the second half was more compelling, a little bit more mature subject matters they dive into, and I'll talk about the first half in a little bit, but I really felt that the second half shows you more of the adult side of Selena, so it gets more mature in the subject matter. I felt the writing was more mature, I felt that it was a more compelling element, and also I just found it to be a lot more interesting when we get to the second half compared to the first half. So those are my positives that I have for Selena. Now diving into some of my criticisms. So I will say, when it comes to this show, something that I thought of was Bohemian Rhapsody. And what I mean by that is, so you have Selena's family, who were the executive producers of this series. And I felt that this show, at times, mostly in that first half and kind of throughout the season, if I'm being honest, it was very neutered. I feel like this show, very similar to how I feel about Bohemian Rhapsody, they didn't really dive into the drama. They didn't really dive into certain aspects that I'm going to get into here in a little bit, and just feel like they were just really kind of holding back, and they didn't really want to, they showed you all the good stuff, but they didn't show you a lot of the bad or the ugly. Of course, we have some tension-felt moments. We have some, disputes with the record labels, but a lot of the fights, the drama were resolved within one scene versus it kind of sprayed out, and really dive into what these characters were like. So I really wish that they would have let the chains loose, kind of dive really into the family dynamic. And I felt like the show was really kind of teetering the line of being a fluff piece, if I'm being honest. So diving deeper into that, I mentioned that I found that the second half was more mature than the first half. When it comes to the first half, for me, I felt like at times it felt like a sitcom. I almost felt like I was watching a freeform ABC Family. All this was missing, which is like a laugh track, a live audience, because it was really felt like the way it was structured was really weird in that first half. Again, I felt like it was just not that much character development. They really blew past a lot of the character development. There was a lot of off-screen character development. And again, that first half, to me, the first like 4 to 5 episodes was just very, very kid-friendly, which brings me to the idea, or brings me to this show being rated TV PG. And when it comes to that rating, for me, it is a very family-friendly television series, which is great because you want your kids to see Selena. You want your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your uncle, everyone can watch the show, which is great. But to me, it felt very neutered. It felt like a very fluff piece. It didn't really dive into, again, the second half gets a little bit more mature because Selena gets into a relationship. Again, she's an adult, so you have a little bit more compelling story to tell. But even within the second half, I still feel like it was a fluff piece. It was very PG type of audience where they didn't dive into, okay, what it's like to be this girl who's a very attractive woman. What is it like where she's being hit on? What is it like with her sister? What is it like with her brother, meeting his first love and all that stuff? It really just felt very neutered, and I think that's due to that TV PG, which again, it opens itself to a bigger audience, but then it feels very neutered and very restricted with that rating of the show, which brings me into the glossing over of a lot of big character development. There was a lot of off-screen character development. I mean, we would go literally from episode to episode. We would go weeks ahead, months ahead. Sometimes we would skip years. So I feel like they glossed over a lot of stuff. And I have a bunch of examples to kind of give you all. So, and without getting into the spoilers. So, for example, going from an English to a Spanish singer. I like how the show kind of touches on that, but it's very, very quickly glossed over. They really don't dive into what that means to Selena, how she might have want to fought the studios back saying, no, I want to do more American songs versus Spanish songs. I don't really feel like they dive deep into that and what that means for her not really being able to speak Spanish for a large part of her life. So I wish the show would have dove deeper into that. There was no pushback from the kids at all in regards to being kids in this band almost every day. They were in school, they had to be pulled out of school. You rarely got an idea what it was like for these 3 kids to be taken out of their teenage lives, their kids, and not having a childhood. There was literally no pushback from the kids at all, which I know, again, it's great to see the family come together, them loving each other, really embracing themselves as the band, but there was no pushback at all from the kids from literally missing their childhood. Going into the idea of them living with Abraham's brother. They live in one bedroom and there's a whole family in one bedroom. there's no pushback from Marcella. Like, you need to get a job, Abraham. You need to support this family. Or even Marcella going out and getting a job. I wish they would have dove deeper into like the family dynamic of the husband and wife, and like, why are we living in your brother's house? Why aren't we having our own house? I wish they would have dove deeper into that. Also, them struggling to get money from gigs, them having this bus with no seats for many years. It's just like, where is the drama? Where is the tension within those things happening? We don't see Selena getting her first record deal. They gloss over that. We go from one episode where they don't have a record deal to the next time we see them, they have one. It's just like, whoa, why didn't we see that? What's the logistics of it? What's the kind of the things that they have to do for the contract? We really don't get that much into that. I mentioned that Selena doesn't get to be a teenager, and the show kind of touches on that, but the show gives you just like, she's like, oh, it's okay, my friends don't hang out on the weekdays, and then on the weekends I get to play at my gigs. And it was just like, that was it. She didn't really dive into like, no, I really wish I could hang out. Wish I could have a boyfriend. I could have more kids to hang out with. But the show really doesn't dive into that. The fact that Abraham, I talked about it earlier with Marcella really kind of being one-dimensional. Marcella doesn't have any pushback other than a couple occasional scenes where she's like, Abraham, you don't need to push these kids to do that. Abraham, we're not going to live in your brother's garage. But other than that, Abraham's buying houses without her decision being into it, how they get their gigs, how he's pushing them so hard. I really wish that there was more of Marcella giving her input on the band, and her being a mother and stepping in saying, no, we're not going to do this. You don't get that dynamic with the family in regards to the adults of this family. I do applaud the performances. Again, I really enjoyed the performances, but I do feel like a lot of our characters were very surface level in regards to character development, and it was kind of frustrating at times because, again, you don't dive into the psyche and what it was like for these characters. And I mentioned it in my character breakdown. This show is called Selena, but if you didn't know much about Selena, I don't know how much you would have learned from her, because literally, again, I think Christian did a good job of embracing how lovely she was, how great of a person she was. She was a great song singer, which I'll talk about the music here in a bit. But this show really focused more on Abraham and AB, in my opinion, more than they did Selena. And I'm like, why is that the case? Again, I know there's going to be a part 2. The second half does kind of shine a light more on Selena than it does the first half, but literally, I felt like I learned more about AB, and I know about Selena more. I'm a fan of her, so I knew some things, and there's some things in the show that I didn't know, but I feel like I learned more about AB and Abraham than I did about Selena, and I think that's kind of a disservice to this character because it is called Selena, right? So that was something that kind of stood out to me. And then I mentioned it briefly in regards to, obviously, Selena's this incredible songwriter. She's an incredible singer, and AB writes the songs, and the band comes together and creates the songs. But when it comes to the musical aspect of the show, I never felt like I got that Selena moment, right? I didn't feel like she had a particular stage presence. There wasn't the incredible dance move. She was an incredible dancer. I never felt like we got a Selena moment where she just embraces the crowd, has an incredible performance. I didn't think if I'm being honest, the singing of the show wasn't all that great. I just feel like the musical aspect, again, the soundtrack of the show was cool, but when it comes to Selena performing and the music in the show, I never really got that punch that I was kind of looking for within the musical aspect of the show. Then also, I don't want to dive into the spoilers, but, we know Selena, if you know about her life, she has a love, her first love that she meets, and, all that stuff play out. I don't want to get into the spoilers, but I feel like the show really didn't dive deep into the love that she had for this particular character that I won't get into without spoilers. So some other things that I kind of wrote down, it was extremely upsetting to kind of see just how the show handled, again, certain aspects, glossed over certain aspects, and really didn't dive into the character developments, where their heads were, the struggle of being teenagers and not being able to live their lives. So I just felt like the show really was a fluff piece, didn't dive into the character development, glossed over a lot of stuff, skipped over a lot of stuff, and it just felt like more of the AB Abraham show more than it did Selena. And that's just me personally. So those are my criticisms. Before I give you all my overall thoughts and let you know if it's worth checking out, if you haven't already, make sure you like this video, share this video, leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell so you don't miss any of my other content. With that being said, let me give you my overall thoughts and let you know if I think this is worth checking out when it comes out December 4th. So overall, look, at the end of the day, I'll always show up for a series or a movie about Selena just because of how iconic she was and what she meant to people. And I think the show did do a good job of highlighting who she was as a person in regards to her being so loving. And also, it was kind of nice to see the family on the road and the dedication and the sacrifices they had to make. But unfortunately, the show's approach, in my opinion, in telling the story felt very underwhelming and very underdeveloped. But at the end of the day, even though I have my flaws and my criticisms about the show, I'll give the show showrunners the benefit of a doubt and give them a second chance to dive deeper in a part 2 based on the second half of the show, really kind of diving deeper into the compelling nature of the story and the mature nature of the story. So I'm hoping that part 2 will be a little bit more stronger than part 1. So do I recommend it? Yes. If you love Selena, I think you'll find some things to appreciate about this show. If you're not a fan of Selena, if you don't even know who she is, I don't know if the show will give you all the backstory that you might be looking into. So again, this was one of my most anticipated series this year, and I came in with a lot of high expectations. So if you were like me, maybe it's safe to maybe lower your expectations and you might find some more enjoyment. But I would say watch it just because it is important to support shows like this and support the Tejano music scene, Selena and her family, and showing stories like this. And I want to see more stories like this. So in that case, I do recommend you all give it a watch. But again, maybe lower the bar a little bit. But again, that's just my thoughts. Again, this is an early review. This show does come on Netflix December 4th. So when it does drop on Netflix and once you've seen it, let's discuss everything in the comments. Your pros, your cons. Are you more on the positive, kind of in the middle, or did you not like the show? And then once you've seen the show in its entirety, will you be back to watch the part 2 of the Selena story? So let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, make sure to like, share, comment your thoughts below. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you don't miss any of my other content. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Hope you're staying safe, and we'll see you on the next video.